It is winter, so that means it is time to prune. That's up next. Hello everyone, this is Dwayne with Edge of Nowhere Farm, and we're coming to you here on a cool January morning 2021. We're here on the Western Orchard, and this is where we have all of our stone fruit. You can see from the looks behind me that the orchard has now finally gone completely dormant, and we are ready to get ready for spring. I don't know about you guys, but in the middle of winter, as soon as those leaves drop, in our case, we end up removing a lot of the leaves, I start seeing the trees for kind of what they really are. You see the skeleton, you see the core of the tree, and you see where you need to really kind of clean some things up and really be ready for production come spring. We're right in the middle of all of our peach trees, and that's where we're going to start today. I like to look at this as really kind of an art form. I really like taking a tree, looking at its base, looking at the tree itself, and then kind of whittling it down and turning it into what you want it to be. These trees that you're looking at today have all been in the ground for just under a year. So what we're really accomplishing is we're really setting the structure, the core of the tree, and what it'll eventually do. Let's go ahead and focus on this tree right behind me here. We're going to use it as an example as we move through today. This tree here, I just kind of like to look at it in general, as we were saying, and I can see already there's several different cuts I need to make. First thing we're going to be looking at is anything that's really low. Now, one thing that I want you to keep in mind when you're looking at how we're going to be pruning these trees is we're challenged with rabbit pressure, heavy rabbit pressure on our trees. Not so much on our peach trees. However, I do want to make sure that I'm keeping them protected from rabbits, particularly around the trunk. We have both cottontail rabbits and jackrabbits here, so we need to give ourselves at least 2.5 to 3 feet before we really start all of our horizontal branching. So you'll see right away, I'm going to start taking out low branching. Now with a peach tree, we do want an open center, a nice open center to get plenty of sunlight inside, so I will be working on that to some extent today. But I'm going to primarily be establishing the trunk, which is the goal this first year. Now I'm also going to be looking at any branches that cross. You'll see as you get into here, I have branches like this that eventually would become heavy, nice thick branches, but you can see it's rubbing up against the trunk here. Definitely going to lose branches like this. I've got that kind of going on throughout. Branches crisscrossing this way. I have a branch that's coming right up into the middle. And again, branches going straight across the back there, those are all definitely going to be coming off. And now also I'm again establishing the trunk, so I'm going to have to take a lot of this branching off down here. So all these branches here are going to be coming off because I've got my main trunk right here. In addition, you can see down here where the original graft was, I still have kind of a nub that actually is the rootstock. I'm going to go ahead and take that off here as well. Now, in addition to all those things, when we first planted these trees, these were potted trees. We were watering up here closer to the tree, and we wanted to keep that soil moist. At least for us here in Arizona, it doesn't really matter that we have wood chips up against the trunk because it remains so dry. However, now that we're going to be watering further away, I'm going to pull these away. So again, I really make sure that I'm not going to have any issues with sucker growth or anything like that down at the base of the tree. If I did have that, I'd also be removing sucker growth. Before we get started, I should talk a little bit about supplies and things to make sure you're going to stay safe. First thing are going to be gloves. So I'm going to be in here making cuts. I've got sharp objects in my hand. Going to do all that I can to not cut myself, so I do that. Next thing would be eye protection, and we learned this the hard way the other night when we were out here stripping leaves off of the trees with Lori. I had these glasses on and she didn't. We're in here working, and all of a sudden you're starting to get these little branches whipping around, and it actually got Lori in the eye. So again, eye protection, very important. Next thing and primary thing that we use to prune around here would be these Corona clippers. I like these little guys here for making small cuts on these small branches. These work great. Next thing would be a set of loppers. So these guys here will be able to make up to about 1.5 inches or so as far as diameter in one of the branches. This will lop those branches off without any issue. Next thing, and actually the final thing, would be this guy here. So this is a reciprocating saw, and this is a specific type of blade that's designed for pruning. So when we're making larger cuts, won't have it so much on this tree, but we will on some of the others. But I've got larger cuts that the loppers can't handle. I'm gonna go ahead and use this year. Now you can also use a handsaw. We've done that in the past, but we got a lot of trees that we need to get pruned today and over the next couple of days. This makes that a lot easier on the hands. Now I'm gonna go ahead and stop talking and get to work. So you can see already how this tree is starting to kind of take shape. Got all this cleaned up down here. I will clean these cuts up just a little bit more. One thing I want to do is have Lori slide in a little bit. Ideally, when you're making these cuts, you're going to want to try to cut just past the collar. It might be hard to make out on camera, but almost like a volcano that kind of goes into a tip. So you have this tapering that happens from the tree, and then it tapers into the branch itself. So the cut that I'm making is just past what you would call the collar, which is where it really tapers into the branch. So what'll happen is this is going to have just a little bit of dieback as it heads down in towards the trunk, and then this will heal over as the trunk grows and completely flatten out. You basically won't even know that that occurred. So I'm going to keep that cut as best I can looking just like that. The last thing that of course we're challenged with here is deciding whether we're going to make any cuts as far as opening up the center. One other challenge I know I have is the height. I would prefer to keep this tree cut to about right here. So under most circumstances, you'd probably lose this center trunk here, leave yourself about 2 feet or so of trunk, and then allow this to come out this way with horizontal scaffolding. Unfortunately, we're gonna have to leave these taller, so I'm probably gonna have to make my cut further up here. But before I do that, I'm gonna actually test the height with one of our cages. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and call it from here. So we're kind of judging about how high that cage is. Again, we probably won't have to do that on our peach trees. We'll mainly just be protecting the trunk from the rabbits. But I think I'm gonna have my first scaffolds either here and here, or they may eventually be up here a little bit higher. So this year we're not gonna allow these trees to fruit. So I'm not too concerned as far as having a whole lot of branching on here, because obviously this time of year, any branching that you take off that's a year old would typically be your fruiting branches. Again, not an issue for us here because this is not gonna have fruit on it. Now, what we need to do is we need to get these other 10 peach trees done. So Lori and I are gonna go ahead and get to work. We'll show you what these look like when we're done. This will give you an idea of what the peach trees are gonna look like. Now I wanna show you a couple of these because we had to make a couple of hard decisions and also do kind of some changes here as far as these first round of prunings. The first thing you'll notice here that's a little different with this one is I don't have that nice big open center that you're gonna find in some of these other ones. The main reason for that is, it's hard to see, but we actually had to take 2 large branches, one off the back side here and one off the front side here. So now generally speaking, you don't want to take more than about 30% of the total mass away from the tree when you're doing a pruning in any one season. And I was pretty confident that I probably surpassed that with these 2 cuts. So for the most part, we left a couple more cuts down here, but left the top of the tree essentially the same. We want to make sure that there's going to be plenty of leaf matter and branching that's going to be able to develop this year with the root mass that we have underneath there. Second thing while we're here, Laura, I'm gonna have Lori slide in a little bit. Here in Arizona, we talked a little bit about wood chip mulch. It's okay to pile it up against the trunk during the summertime. There's not gonna be any issues. We do pull it back in the wintertime. One of the things that ensures is to make sure that you don't have the tree, because of the mulch, being planted too deep or burying itself and burying the root flare. We talk a little bit about that root flare, and you can see right here as Lori comes in closer, real easy actually to make out. That's our root flare right there. You can see I've got a small feeder root coming out right there, which is fine because my main roots are gonna start right here. So again, just make sure as you're pulling these back that you have that flare or that crown of the root not buried. And obviously we'll come back and we'll paint these trunks. All right, so we have that done. Oh, one other thing with this one here. You'll notice that I've got 3 different basically trunks here, and I had it actually break a lot lower. There really wasn't any other way to do this one. I had a large branch on this side, a large branch on this side, same idea, but we may actually have to keep these 3 trunks here just a little bit lower. Now you can probably hear our chickens. This is a lot closer to our chickens, so there's activity there as far as rabbits are concerned. Plus us, we're here every day, a couple times a day to check on the chickens, get eggs and that kind of thing. So hopefully we'll be able to keep an eye on this and see if we get any damage from those rabbits. All right, so we have our peach trees done. Next thing we need to do, it's getting nice and warm today, is we need to get on to the rest of our stone fruit. So this real quick is a newly planted tree. So this is a plum apricot hybrid. And you can see all I did here, this tree is probably about 8 months old from being grafted. So it did go through the summer. We planted it in the fall. It had 1 branch going this way and a single branch coming out this way. Went ahead and trimmed those back, so now I have a trunk that we can take care of next season and not need to go through all the extra steps and extra years of pruning, because I already know with this tree I'm gonna have to let it get about this tall before it comes out. These plum hybrids and plum trees, we're finding the rabbits really go after them. Not so much the peaches, but these plum and plum hybrid trees, the rabbits just devour them. So newly planted tree, 1 year in the ground, turning it into a whip essentially. This tree here, you can actually see, we had it caged this season. It grew really, really well. This is a nectarine plum hybrid and a lot of branching down here at the bottom. So we already know, because it's that plum hybrid, we are gonna have to make sure we keep this caged. I'm gonna have to also come back and make sure that I can get the cage tall enough that it branches out above that cage, because we're gonna have to keep this one caged. But I'm gonna have Lori slide in, I wanna point something out. This branch right here, I can't tell for sure if that's sucker growth. It might be. I know my graft was here, my graft took here. So I don't think it is. I think it's actually just part of the tree. But I'm gonna have to be real careful when I'm making the cut down here to take this particular branch off. And then of course we're gonna be coming up the rest of the tree just like the peach trees, no difference there. And then if we can get an open center this year based on how high it's gonna need to be, we definitely will do that as well. This is what this tree is gonna look like now when it's done. So this is the first tree so far we've had where this 3-foot cage is fitting perfectly underneath what will eventually be that bowl or that open center that we're trying to achieve with all of these stone fruit. Okay, this guy's done. Now we're on to the next one. This one's actually gonna be an apricot tree. This one's gonna be a little more complicated. You can see I have essentially what is forming as 2 different trunks here, which I can't have with this particular tree. This is an apricot plum hybrid. So again, major issue with rabbits with this tree. I have to get to the point like the tree you just saw that actually has a much higher spot where it comes out and turns into the bowl. So I've got a couple different cuts. I know I'm gonna lose this branch here, which is a significant portion of the tree, and I may not do much more than that this year. So this is definitely gonna be a multi-year process with getting this tree established correctly. This will give you an idea what this tree is gonna look like. So you can see we were able to come up most of the way. Probably could have come up a little bit further, but because we took off so much branching down at the bottom, I didn't want to remove any more of the top. But overall, I think this one's gonna look really good. Okay, we've got another apricot tree that we're gonna go ahead, actually 2 other apricot trees we're gonna go ahead and knock out. And then we have a couple other varieties we still wanna show you. A couple things I wanted to point out, some of the shots that you're seeing. I need to kind of emphasize the fact that these trees grow very, very rapidly here in Arizona. In fact, these last 2 trees here are our almond trees, our all-in-one almond trees. And you can see, compared to some of the other trees you're seeing, they haven't grown quite as tall. However, they grow really stocky, very dense branching and very dense leaves in throughout the middle part of the tree. We still want to treat these a lot like you would treat any other stone fruit, because that's essentially what they are. Almonds are basically stone fruit, very similar to a peach. In fact, if you've seen one, it looks just like a very small peach, just with very little flesh. So we're gonna treat this basically the same way we do all of our other peach trees. And hopefully I've got a good break up here where I can open up this center, get good scaffolding up here, and it'll be above the 3-foot cage, because one thing we definitely found is you can kind of tell how this is trimmed a little bit here on this side. Before we got good cages around these almond trees, they were getting annihilated by rabbits. Rabbits love these almond branches. One other thing I wanted to point out, we talked about this a little bit as well, but we were able to come back. We had the crown you can see is right here. So this is a good height for us here in Arizona. Again, we don't want to be deep because our ground is just so hard, and you can always wood chip up here to kind of help keep this protected. But I did have to come back. We were probably about, an inch, maybe a little more too deep. So I was able to come back because we have them mounded. I was able to come back and get that fixed. Lori and I want to go ahead and get this wrapped up. So we're going to get the pruning done on these, and then we'll show you what it looks like in the end. We have these 2 almond trees done. So a couple things I want to point out. As we were saying, almond trees are going to grow a lot like your other peach trees are going to do. You can see here I've got basically some scaffolding, a nice open center. We'll come back and actually paint over this nub right here all the way down. We just ran out of paint. But you get a good shot, hopefully, of how evenly spaced these scaffoldings are. They need to be evenly spaced like this. Imagine these as just massive branches that these are going to become to support all that almond production. So you can see that real easily there. We did the exact same thing with that tree on that end. And I think for the most part, that's going to wrap it up. But I want to head back to the front, give you guys a shot of the entire orchard and what it looks like here after pruning is done in the middle of winter. Now I'll give you a shot of just what the orchard looks like here in the middle of winter. So I don't know about you guys, but obviously there's a sense of accomplishment. You come through, excitement because you're looking forward to seeing the expansion and growth of the trees. But there's something that's just beautiful about the middle of winter, just a beautiful, clean look. Now, of course, that's really nothing compared to what this is going to look like come spring. So just want to thank you for joining us today. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. Any questions or comments, leave those in the comment section down below. In our Amazon shop, I'll leave a link down in the description. That is a free, painless way to help support the channel. If you start with that link, it doesn't matter what you buy, you help to support us here. So just want to thank you for joining us today and remind you, if we can farm on the edge of nowhere, so can you. Here, we're not going to allow these trees. You okay?
No. I'm on a rock.